everyone, I'm Jess and I'm the content manager here at Course Report. Course Report is the resource for helping people find the right coding bootcamps for them. If you haven't used Course Report yet, check it out. You can research the best coding bootcamps all over the world, find out which coding languages to learn, where to apply, and how to fund your own coding bootcamp experience. Today, I'm so happy to have Amber Riley joining us to talk about her coding bootcamp experience. Amber Riley graduated from TrueCoders this year and is now a software test engineer at eFinancial in Seattle, Washington. So Amber, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. You have such an awesome tech job now, and I definitely want to talk about that soon, but let's start with what you were up to before you actually started TrueCoders. So what's that pre-bootcamp story for you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, by the way. I'm excited. So my pre-bootcamp story. So before I started at TrueCoders back in October of 2020, I was working at a global logistics company called Expeditors. I'd been there for about like 4.5 years. Started as pretty much a support specialist. So helping end users when they come across like issues on applications that they're using with the company. So if there's like bugs involved, then I would have to, escalate those to our development team to work on. After about 3.5 years in, or a little, maybe closer to 4, I moved to be an EDI specialist. So that part was a little more technical than just my job as an application support specialist, because I actually got to, read through code and try to locate bugs in applications that way while still working with my previous team, which was nice.
And what inspired you to make that jump from more of like a tech support role to this actual software engineer role?
So actually, while I was working at my last job, I had been interested in software test engineering anyway. So the last company I worked for just didn't have any opening up anytime soon. So I didn't really get the opportunity to pursue it. But pretty much COVID honestly put things in a perspective for me. So our company went remote, I want to say back in March, when a lot of places were going remote. And that's when I had started in my newer position. And honestly, it's just like after a few months, I kind of realized I wasn't happy with the work I was doing. I was stuck. I wasn't really learning anything. And the only thing really keeping me there for so long was the people I saw every day. And now I wasn't seeing them anymore. So I'm like, well, I'm not fulfilled with my work. I feel like I'm not learning anything. My brain just feels very, I guess, stuck. And so that's when I started to look for something different.
And, there are so many coding boot camps out there now, especially so many online coding boot camps. So what set TrueCoders apart from all the others?
Yeah, so did talk to some other boot camps as well. What I liked about TrueCoders the most was they were super friendly. They reached out to me, like I said, super friendly, gave me the resources, answered any questions I had, and they were actually focusing a lot on C#, which was the language I was mostly interested in learning. So that was kind of the big thing for me. And honestly, it's just with COVID going on, they were offering like good deals on their program. It wasn't like when I had gone, well, other places were offering like deals on their programs, but you had to apply for scholarships and whatnot. But TrueCoders are like, well, a lot of people are struggling right now, so we're actually just going to offer a discount. We're not going to make you go through this process to see if maybe you can get a discount. It was like, nope, like everyone's struggling. People are losing their jobs right now. People need help. So we're going to offer the course cheaper during COVID. So
I love hearing that. That sounds like super supportive.
Yep.
I'd love to dig in for a sec on what TrueCoders application process was like for you. You said that you had a little bit of experience with code. So did you feel like you had to know basic coding to even apply to TrueCoders?
No, not at all, actually. And they were, they let me know that too. They're like, hey, don't worry about knowing anything previously. It'll help for sure, but this is totally like intro. So don't worry about it. And they did offer like some, pre-coursework we could do. It was optional. They suggested it'd be good to at least like read through it and do your best just ahead of time. But that was nice because I kind of like had some idea of like the languages we'd be working with and things that I would come across, things I need to focus on, I guess, while I'm there. So
yeah,
it did help.
For that pre-work, what kinds of languages or even just like methodologies was it covering?
So they had a lot of like coursework just to start with SQL. And we actually didn't like get really into SQL until later in the program. But it still kind of helped set that foundation because we didn't spend as much time with SQL as we did C#. So by the time like I did that coursework and we actually like went back to it later in the class too, and we're able to ramp up on it really quickly. So then it's like, okay, we can jump right into these assignments. We know what we're doing. I know how I can implement this into like projects and whatnot. So that felt good.
You mentioned that there was that automatic discount during your cohort for those just, kind of struggling with COVID, so they could just immediately jump into the boot camp. How did you end up paying for the rest of the tuition? Did you just do that out of pocket, or did you get some kind of loan or any other additional scholarships or even CARES Act?
So I went out of pocket, but they offered just monthly payment plan.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't have to just like throw it all down at once, which was nice. So they're like, yeah, just like we can do it a different way, but I chose to go with paying it off in a year. Like starting from when I started the class in October was my first payment, and then I pay it off for a year, yearly payment.
So you were learning online with TrueCoders from your own Seattle, Washington home. And TrueCoders is based in Alabama, but now they have the online boot camp. I'd love to know what a typical day ended up looking like in that online boot camp format.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I was nervous at first to see what it would be like, but it was really smooth. I'm 2 hours earlier than them. So, I might be a little more tired when I'm logging on versus everyone else in the class. But yeah, so it was actually really good. You could tell like tutors, they had it all kind of like figured out and planned. I think this was actually their second like full course since COVID had started. I think they did one previous before that, but they had like all the assignments ready to go and filled out. We had, everything in like a Google Classroom. We did everything just on Zoom, like all our videos and stuff on the lectures were recorded. So if there were any issues, like students could just go and like rewatch that. And so everything was on time and super smooth through the whole process. I was like pleasantly surprised, honestly.
And for a typical day or a typical week, was it a lot of lecture time, or was it broken up with also projects like breakout rooms?
So in the first couple of weeks, it's a little more lecture time. We'll get a lecture and then we'll do assignments at the end. But the further we would get into the course is when we would do more project time. So the first couple of weeks of the course is more like getting, the foundations and learning as much as you can, and then doing weekly assignments along the way. But the projects hit, I want to say like maybe in the middle to later in the program.
And, each bootcamp has a different type of curriculum. What did the TrueCoders online bootcamp curriculum actually cover? Like which languages did it focus on?
So like I said, we did like C#, SQL, we did HTML and CSS because a lot of us use that in our final projects. We mess with just, different things in general outside of languages. Like we did a lot of .NET stuff. So we mess with like ASP.NET when building things. Because of SQL, we were using like Dapper, and because of like CSS and HTML, we were using like Bootstrap. So bunch of different things. And by the time I was working on my final project, it was cool because I tried to like implement as much as I could from what I learned in the class into my final project. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to just be like, okay, well, I want to do this, but I want to make sure, I want to use APIs in my final project, but I want to use SQL and C# in my final project. But I'm also going to do, like some Bootstrap too, like incorporate everything. And so that was a lot of fun.
So people who are interested in online coding boot camps are often interested in that online community. So I'd love to know, what was that TrueCoders online bootcamp community like? And also, were there other women in your cohort?
Yeah. So I guess, let's see, where do I start? I'll start with my classmates first. So my classmates were great. I got to work with a bunch of them. And we actually would have like a little Discord channel and we'd like hop on that and just like work on things together. Not just projects, but even just like our weekly assignments, like, someone would hit someone and be like, hey, like, can you like look at this with me? I'm like, this is what I'm doing so far, but it's not quite working out. I can't get my unit tests to pass. Like, can you take a look with me? And we would just like pair up on things and get people together and like just do our homework together, which is a lot of fun. And there was other women in the class too. I got to work with some of them and they were great. Like it was cool, like working with a bunch of like really inspired and motivated people. And it was cool to see like more women doing it too. I felt kind of like I didn't feel so out of place, if that makes sense, with other women in the program.
That's really
And yeah, and so that was just with the classmates. But my teachers and the TAs were also like super great. Like it wasn't just in class where I could ask questions. If I'm working on something, I could just like message my teacher, and be like, hey, like, what do you think about this? After class. And the TAs were great too. So we could just set up like little appointments with the TAs every day if we wanted to, just to get help on stuff and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, or I'm stuck on this. And yeah, everyone's super supportive and super helpful. Like I wasn't ever scared to reach out to anyone.
That's great. You mentioned earlier the projects. I'd love to dive in a bit more. So what kinds of projects did you complete during the boot camp? And are there group projects or is it mostly individual projects?
Yeah. So it's funny you ask that because I would try to do stuff like individually because I was, a little shy. So but I did start, doing group projects eventually and just being like, I'm just gonna like talk to people and work with people. But yeah, so some of my favorite things to do, oddly enough, were like just our weekly assignments. Like, I don't know why, but I love trying to like write code to get my unit tests to pass. Like, it was just like really satisfying when you see like those successes pop up. So we had a bunch of like weekly assignments that I really loved doing. But project wise though, like the first kind of like bigger project that we worked on, it was random groups. So we didn't get to choose any of our partners, which was good because there were like certain people I would flock to a little more with my classmates. So this was good to get to work with people I don't usually work with. But we did like this Taco Bell geolocator project. So we pretty much like wrote these unit tests to like parse through a CSV that has all these Taco Bell locations in Alabama. And we would like download this .NET Core package and we'd calculate the distance between 2 points. So pretty much like the two farthest locations. And it sounds so silly, but it was a lot of fun. And like, I feel like I really made some friends that way through the class. And oh yes, on my final project, I'm very proud of my final project. So did like this movie API database project. So it's just like a IMDb clone in a way. I just used like two different third-party IMDb APIs, and I used like ASP.NET MVC to pretty much allow users that way to search for movies or TV shows. And what would come back was like the title, year, poster, and any other little info in the results, like actor names and whatnot. So there was a lot of like backend work involved, which was awesome because I realized I really like doing backend coding a little more than the front end stuff. But it's obviously a website, so I still had to do a lot of front end. So I did a lot of like Bootstrap. So meaning I work with tons of HTML and CSS to make it look pretty and everything to fit right on the screen and not be all over the place. But like I said, I wanted to use as much as I could from the class. So I used Dapper as well and MySQL to pretty much like store like fake emails and passwords that way for when people would like sign up for an account. So those are like two of the big projects that really stuck out to me.
Did you end up presenting that capstone, that final project on like some sort of demo day?
I did. Like on our last day, some of the students, we showed off our final project. Yeah. And I remember one moment that was so funny to me, but it was going to like a different screen on my website and being able to hit the back button and it went back to the previous screen, which is like something I was oddly struggling with for a little bit. So it was just like little victories. I'm like, yes, like no issues when I clicked back. It went back to the previous screen. So
I love that. You know, it's all of the victories you can possibly get in those kinds of projects. And a big part of boot camps these days is helping people prepare for the job hunt. How did TrueCoders as an online boot camp prepare you for that job hunt?
Oh man, so it was great, honestly. Denise, the career services woman that works there, she's so great and so supportive. She would have meetings twice a week, like Tuesdays and Thursdays with everyone to go over like things you need to watch out for when applying for jobs, what the interviewers are looking for, the questions they might ask. Sometimes she would have like guest speakers on there, like alumni from previous years talking about like their experience with the interviews and what helped them and like how many they had to go through and whatnot, and questions you should ask the interviewers as well. And you could actually just like do one-on-ones with her every day too if you needed to, and she would go over your resume with you. She'd look, help you get your LinkedIn updated and whatnot. But it was nice though too, because she like didn't hold your hand the whole time in the way where like she's doing all the work for you. She's like great at getting you motivated to do it yourself, but giving you really good suggestions and ideas along the way. Because one of the things is like, well, she can't do it all for you, because what is it going to be like when you're actually in an interview and she's not there? You kind of have to do it on your own. But I think one of the best things I did in that program was like meeting up with her as frequently as I did.
And which roles in tech did you feel qualified to apply for once you finished the program?
So I would say I was feeling comfortable with like, junior dev and then more QA positions. QA is actually what I was most interested in, which is why I'm really happy I got into this software test engineer position. That's what I've been looking at before. And I guess that's another thing I had asked TrueCoders before I decided to go with them, because I was like, hey, I'm not sure I'm going to feel by the end of the program. I'm really interested in like software test engineer. Is that also a possibility? And they're like, yeah, like we have students that get jobs in that too after this. And so that was another thing that like sold me on them too. So I felt comfortable with like QA for sure. And then like junior dev positions.
And congrats on your job at eFinancial. That's such a big milestone. What does eFinancial do? Like what kinds of problems is it solving?
Yeah, so they deal with life insurance. So I'm actually on a really big project right now, which is cool. It's like stressful, but in a good way. Pretty much like I'm on this team right now that's like building all the integration points for our new like CRM.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, it's been a lot of fun, like learning all these different things, because we work a lot with like AWS. So with the cloud, which was really new to me. And when I got this job, is like I didn't have like any experience with the cloud, because the previous company I worked for had like really, really old legacy applications. So they didn't have anything like new and amazing at the company yet. So yeah, the project I'm working on is a really big deal right now. So I'm excited. I'm having a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but my team is great. Everyone's super supportive and we're having a lot of fun.
And how did you end up landing this job? Was it a connection through TrueCoders or just you doing cold applies?
Just like applying,
Yeah.
looking at places. Yeah. Um, so I actually started here as an internship before I moved full time. I was an intern there for about 2.5, 3 months before I got the full time position, which I think was like really great for me, honestly. Being an intern, the internship was like really just a lot of learning. It gave me a chance to kind of like go at my own pace in a way. I didn't have to like jump right into all the crazy stuff immediately.
Were you paired with some senior team members during your internship? Oh, cool.
Yep. Yeah. So um, the dev teams usually have just one test engineer on the team with like a bunch of other devs. But I was as an intern, I was on a team with another test engineer, obviously, who was like my mentor through my learning process. And I paired up with devs as well. I didn't just have to work with the test engineers, but I'd pair up with the other devs on the team, the higher up devs, and we would, read through code together and stuff. And, I'd ask questions about the code they're writing because everyone writes code differently. So reading code is the hardest part. Reading other people's code is the hardest part. But it's fun. It's just like leaving comments on code, being like, hey, did you think about this? And then them going back and like fixing that, or like having conversations about like, why they chose to code this way, or and why they, shouldn't change this, or like, oh, hey, that's a good idea. I'm actually going to change that.
Do you recommend that other recent bootcamp grads on that job hunt consider doing an internship?
Yeah, for sure. Like if you find a paid internship, yeah, I'd say go for it. It's it's a good way to like really just like get your feet wet, in my opinion. And if you do great at your internship, most of the time, like that company wants to hire you anyway. So yeah, I'd say definitely don't say no to internships if it's doable for you. But yeah, definitely don't like not look for non-internship roles as well, obviously. But I'd say like, yeah, get details on internships and you can give it a try.
You're working remotely now and you finished the online boot camp. Did you feel like that online boot camp prepared you for working then as a remote software engineer?
Yeah, for sure. So it did prepare me, especially, the career services stuff that prepares you a lot for it too. Um, TrueCoders did prepare me definitely, just because like communicating through like this way and learning how to like read code and stuff for my interview was like really necessary. I actually didn't expect to be like quizzed on code since it was a software test engineer position, but yeah, like they had me read code and stuff and I was able to do it. And if I didn't go to TrueCoders, I wouldn't be able to read this code they put in for me. And it was code in a language I didn't learn at all, but I was still able to tell them like what it was doing. And so like that felt super, super good.
Looking back on what you were doing before TrueCoders versus what you're doing now, how would you describe that difference between working in more of a tech support role versus what you're doing now as a software test engineer?
Yeah. So if I go back to the tech support role, it's almost like there was like only so much I could learn in a way. And when I would find issues and find possible bugs, I would have to escalate to the dev team and they get to do all the cool research. But now it's like the opposite. Like in my position, if I find cool bugs, I get to like look into it and read the code and see what needs to change. And I get to QA it. So it's almost like I have I have more control now and more influence on like what's going out and like the company doing better, I guess, if that makes sense. So, and I'm always learning something new. There's always some crazy stuff like that I've never seen before. And so it's just fun. It's just really engaging. It's fun. You never know what to expect. And I'm always learning something new. So honestly, I'm just never bored anymore.
Reflecting back on this career change experience, do you feel like TrueCoders was worth it for you? Or do you feel like this is something that could have been like self-teaching through one of those kinds of platforms?
I think TrueCoders was worth it for me, for sure. I know there's a lot of, ways you can self-teach, but I really need that structure, and I need to have people there that I can reach out to and talk to and make the experience more fun. Um, for me, when it comes to self-teaching, I've tried multiple times in the past, and I just like couldn't get a hook on it. And I would just stop. I would go for a couple of weeks and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. But like going to TrueCoders, I really had, I guess, more motivation that way because there's people in the same position as me, people I could talk to that felt the same way as me. And it's more disciplined that way. Like I'm on a schedule. There's just the structure that for me, I couldn't get when I was trying to teach myself how to code.
That makes sense. Yeah. What do you feel like your biggest roadblock in this whole career change journey for you?
Um, Gosh, it's so funny. They would talk about imposter syndrome so much in it, and I just kind of didn't like believe it at first. But then I got a job like here, and it's definitely real. It's just the whole like, okay, I learned all this stuff. I'm feeling good. But then you kind of get in the field and realize like, oh, there's a lot of stuff to learn. And there's a lot of stuff you don't know. Like you barely like you learned this much, but it's just there's so many different languages, right? There's so many just different topics and things that you don't know. And so it kind of feels like overwhelming at first, but I try to look at it now as like everyone else was in that position at one point. Even these like dev threes I'm working with felt like that at some point too. So, and that's what they say. They're like, no, just calm down. It's like you'll learn, you'll get the knowledge. It's like you just don't know yet. That's all. It's, don't say you don't know. You just don't know yet.
Do you have any advice for other women who are considering making a career change into software engineering?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I know like not as many women are in STEM, but I would say like if you're thinking about it, just go for it. There's so many different boot camps, and if you are good at like doing the self-taught stuff, like watch some videos on it, try to do some assignments. Like it can be a little intimidating, since it's a lot of men work in that environment. But I haven't had really any bad experiences in this job yet. Like everyone's been super welcoming and helpful. And I'd say just go for it. It's like, I mean, the worst thing to me is like going to an interview and them saying no. Just like, I know it's intimidating, it's scary, but I'd say if you have any interest at all, just like do it, take the plunge, just give it a try, see how it goes. If you don't like it, at least, right? It's better than just sitting there wondering, like, oh, maybe I would have had fun doing that.
That's excellent advice. And I think that's the perfect place to wrap up this Q&A. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Amber, and sharing your bootcamp experience.
Yeah.
And thanks to all of you for watching. We are going to be posting a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog with contact information for TrueCoders, just in case you're inspired by Amber's story and you want to apply for an upcoming cohort. In the meantime, follow Course Report on Facebook and Twitter. And if you're a bootcamp alumni, don't forget to post a review of your coding bootcamp experience with Course Report. Your review is a huge help to anyone thinking of getting into tech today.